So welcome. And thank you so much to our partners who are offering to host different sites around the state. So we have the Northern Vermont Development Association, Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, Springfield Regional Development Corporation, Rutland Economic Development Corporation, Franklin County Industrial Development Corporation, who are working with the Northwest Regional Planning Commission to host a site as well. So thank you so much. It's really nice to have a physical location for applicants to come to network and, you know, just to be there in person. Sometimes it's better than just logging in on a computer. So thanks a lot. So I am at this point going to hand over the control to Melissa Moon, and she is going to walk us through the introduction and a few key components of the webinar.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to have you here. The purpose of this webinar is to inform everyone about the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, the details about the request for proposals for letters of intent, and then subsequent to that, full applications. So our agenda today is to give you a background and the purpose of the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, looking at the two investment areas of the program, and most importantly, looking at the grants management system, which is how applicants will actually apply for the Working Lands, for submit your letters of intent. We will look at the dates, deadlines, and your key contact personnel, and we will finish with a question and answer period. So, the Working Lands Administrative Team, we are your support team here. Chelsea Bardo-Lewis is the Business Development Administrator with the Agency of Agriculture, and we'll scroll through these. I don't think we need to read them, but you see Chelsea, Noel?
Yeah, I'm right here. I'll also be presenting today, and I coordinate the Working Lands program. Any questions you may have during the application process, shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm working on a 24-hour response time right now, so the calls are really heavy this time of year. But if you don't hear from me in 24 hours, then just give me another call. That's what I'm working on. And yeah, so I handle the outreach and then also the stewardship component. So once you get your grant, working with you to just highlight the successes and help tell your story.
And I'm Melissa Moon. I'm the actually now Contracts and Grant Specialist with the Ag Development Division within the Agency of Agriculture. I work closely with all the grant recipients once the grants have been awarded, and I provide technical assistance, especially in how to navigate the regulatory ins and outs of grants with the state. And I will admit there are not just a few. There's a number of different things that you need to know in order to, as we say, stay in compliance with state regulations, because it's taxpayer money, and we want to make sure that everyone is a good steward of taxpayer money. When not at work, I can be found in the woods harvesting edible and herbs and medicinal wild fungi, because I love getting out into the woods. And it really goes well with our farm and forest products focus. Also, downstairs, and we can have her send up pretty soon, is Emma Hansen. She's a Working Lands Coordinator with the Agency of Agriculture. She's specifically working with our Forestry Committee to help grow that sector, and it's really been so exciting to bring the forestry sector, forest products, into the working lands and to really help grow that sector. She just recently received her Master's in Agricultural, Food, and Environmental Policy from Tufts University in Boston. She lives up in Sugar Bush and can ski on, ski off where she lives. And she is a new member of our team, and we're so excited to have her with us.
Yeah, she's really good.
Also, we have Jared Duvall. He works over at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. These are our close partner departments within the state. So the Agency of Agriculture is working with ACCD, Commerce and Community Development, as well as the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, and that is Matt Langlis. He's the designee to Commissioner Michael Snyder. All of these people are very closely involved with our work here at the agency with the Working Lands Grant Program. So we're not going to go through all of these, but and we will have a copy of this webinar. But the Working Lands Enterprise Board was just enlarged. We have a large number of board members. All of these seats are designated in legislation, so each one board member represents a different sector of the working lands economy. So, an overview, we're going to look at the background and purpose of the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative and instructions on the business and service provider investment areas, how you submit your letter of intent, again, date, deadline. So the Vermont Council on Rural Development, VCRD, founded and led the Council on the Future of Vermont. I think this was back in either in the late 90s and the early 2000s. This has been a long work in progress. And they found that over 97% of Vermonters endorsed the value of a working landscape as key to our future. And it was higher than any other value expressed by the people of Vermont. So they created the Working Landscape Partnership to unite Vermonters so that we can implement key policy and program efforts to advance our working landscape. And this partnership is made up of individuals and organizations that advance these parts of our resource economy. Investing in our farm and forest future is the action plan of the Vermont Working Landscape Partnership. In 2012, they promoted the development of the Working Lands Enterprise Fund with the passage of the Working Lands Enterprise Bill, and VCRD continues to promote the growth of this fund. So the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative has some very clear mission and a vision for future success. I'll just mention this is Jared Duvall, who is a member of the Working Lands team. You saw his picture. He's here in person. Here in our office in Montpelier for those that are listening remotely. So the mission of the Vermont Working Lands Enterprise Initiative is to grow the economies, cultures, and communities of Vermont's working landscape. The Working Lands Enterprise Board achieves this by making essential, catalytic investments in critical leverage points of the Vermont farm and forest economy and facilitating policy development to optimize the agricultural and forest use of Vermont lands. And then we have a vision for future success, that Vermont prospers and its unique sense of place thrives in large part because of intelligent investment in the people and enterprise that comprises farm, food, and forest-based systems. Strong community engagement, and here you are, and support for the farm and forest sectors leads to enhanced quality of life for Vermont citizens and working lands business owners. And so you see our approach. There's a change theory about which these systemic factors create progress toward our mission and vision. You can read through those. Access to capital, technical assistance, workforce development, smart policy, value chain and sector collaboration, as well as public awareness. So, funding available. The Working Lands Enterprise Board began operations in August 2012, and as of today has awarded over $3 million in grant funds to 110 grantees, and this has leveraged over $4.3 million in matching and other funds. So the idea is that it is $3 million and it's growing the economy in the states and leveraging other dollars. And you can go to our website there to look at the other projects that have been funded. This year, approximately $550,000 is available for investment in farm, food systems, forestry, and forest products enterprises. In fiscal year 16, which we're in now, once again, $30,000 in local food market development grant funds will be made available as part of the Working Lands granting process. The focus of LSMD funding is to increase Vermont producers' access to institutional and wholesale markets, promote consumption of local food, and encourage scaling up through new market development opportunities across the state.
So that's one thing to note. The 550 contains that $30,000. It's not a separate process, so it's worked right into the Working Lands application, and it's something that reviewers will take into consideration as well as the board while they're going through that decision-making process.
Exactly. So we have two investment areas for the fiscal year 16 funding. We have agriculture and forestry and forest products, business investments. Grants are between $5,000 and $50,000. So the letters of intent are due Friday, November 6th at noon. And you will applicant notification of acceptance or denial will come in late December. Invited applications for full applications will be due Friday, February 12th, 2016 at noon. And then notification date will be late March 2016. Now, the estimated project start date will be no earlier than late April 2016. And it's really important because I'm the one that writes the grants. And it's important to know that you need to think about this in planning your projects and your applications, that grants aren't going to be made in toward that time. And the state says very clearly that project work cannot begin until we have a signed agreement between all parties. So the service provider investments are $15,000 to $75,000 grants. Those letters of intent have a different timeline. They're due Friday, December 4th. Applications will be notified of acceptance or denial in late January. Invited full applications will be due Friday, March 4th. Application notification will be late April. And project start dates when the grants will be signed and sealed would be no earlier than late May 2016.
All right, so Melissa has just passed the controls back to myself. So once again, this is Noelle speaking. So we're going to go through the two investment areas and cover the eligibility and the reviewer, the review process, what it looks like. Yeah, so here we go. So business grants is the first section. Those grants are from $5,000 to $50,000. And once again, those letters of intent are due November 6th at noon this year. We decided not to do midnight because we thought that wouldn't be fair for us or you. And the eligibility, once again, it's for farm, it could be food product, value-added ag product, forestry, or forest product businesses. And projects may include infrastructure projects, marketing projects, research and development, scaling up, as well as working capital. So the criteria, the applicant must be in compliance with all state regulations, so that includes water quality, taxes, child support, etc. And they must be in good standing with the state at the time of submitting the letter of intent, and they must remain so during that entire grant period. One thing to know is that businesses must be based in Vermont and registered with the Secretary of State at the time of your full application submission. So you could get away with submitting a letter of intent if you're not, here in Vermont. However, it needs to be clear that by the time your full application comes in, you will be registered with the Secretary of State here in Vermont. And all sorts of business structures are eligible, so you can see that list there. Previous recipients of the enterprise investment area are welcome to apply for projects that demonstrate strong supply chain impact. So if you were tuned in the past 3 years to Working Lands, you may notice that this year the application investment areas have changed. So in the past, there was an enterprise investment area, smaller grants, a service provider area. Those were those technical assistance grants usually offered by nonprofits or organizations offering services to businesses around the state. And then your capital and infrastructure projects, which are these bigger projects that really demonstrate impact across the supply chain, or not just for your own business, but for multiple businesses. So this year, we're doing it a little differently. Instead of those two different investment areas, we have one business investment area. But the thing is that, so you have your $5,000 minimum, your $50,000 maximum. If you ask for over $20,000, that's your threshold, you need to really demonstrate strong supply chain impact. And that would mean, it could mean not only impacting your business, but maybe you're buying a piece of equipment that you're sharing with other businesses around the state, something like that. Previous recipients of the Working Lands Capital and Infrastructure area are ineligible for further Working Lands funds until 3 years after the start date of their previous grant. And Emma Hansen has just joined us. She was managing our door, but she will also be presenting on the portion of this webinar as well. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
Okay, so our business grant project criteria. So $5,000 to $50,000 you can ask for. All requests should show innovation, test a new business model, or address a specific supply chain need. Once again, that's your $20,000 threshold. It's really going to need to show that it's not just impacting your business, but other businesses as well. For your budget, we need to see a one-to-one match. Your match doesn't have to all be in hand by the time you submit your letter of intent. When you submit this letter of intent, it's a draft of what you're expecting to do. But by the time of your grant agreement start date, all of those matching funds need to be in place and ready to roll. So one-to-one match, at least 50% of the match needs to be cash. That could be a grant coming from someplace else. It could be cash that you have in the funds in the bank, things like that. The rest may be in kind. And in kind could be a donation of some sort. It could be a donation of someone's time, etc. Projects must be completed within 18 months from the grant agreement start date. And then once again, the beneficiaries really need to be your business, so your ag, forestry, or forest products business. And in limited circumstances, grants for land acquisition will be considered. So this is definitely a limited circumstance situation, and we're going to be really clear up front that they require documentation of value which justifies the request. Examples of this could include a real estate appraisal by a licensed appraiser, or the fair market value as adjusted by the town's common level of appraisal.
Can I just interject also? It's that that cash match applicant labor is considered as a cash match. So your time, your labor is considered as cash.
Yes, good point. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, so scoring criteria. So you've submitted your letter of intent. I work to get everything together, and I'm sending over to our reviewer team, and these are things that they are looking at as they're reviewing and scoring your proposals. So your quality of proposal and concept, they're looking to see that it's a clear letter of intent, that it's been completed. They're looking to see that you're ready to receive the funds and you can begin promptly, and you can, execute the proposal within that grant agreement period. We're looking for impact, so projects that demonstrate, really show, impact for your business. Maybe it will, bring you to the next stage of business development, or really, help you open a new market, increase your income, increase a job. And then once again, there's our $20,000 threshold. We're just plopping it in all areas of the webinar tonight. So requests over $20,000 will be analyzed for that demonstration of supply chain or industry impact. We'll continue on here. So need. Need is certainly addressed when reviewers are looking through proposals. So they look to see that the applicant needs the funding. We look to see that requested funds perhaps leverage other funds, and the project cannot be fully funded through other sources. Sustainability. Reviewers look to see that the project contributes to long-term sustainability and viability of working landscape businesses. It builds partnerships and demonstrates a plan for long-term financial viability beyond the working lands grant period. And then leveraging funds. So once again, that budget shows a one-to-one match, and at least 50% must be cash. Okay, so our second investment area for all of you service providers in the room and logged in. These letters of intent are for proposals that are $15,000 and up to $75,000. The letters of intent are due Friday, December 4th, once again at noon. And these projects should demonstrate direct impacts on Vermont working lands businesses. So if selected service provider grantees, we're now requiring them to survey their clients. So we have a survey. It's similar to your final report that you would submit if you were a business. So your clients would then submit a similar report, which includes your jobs created, increased sales, and increased output for the businesses. Here are a few examples of technical assistance projects. So it could be something for scaling up, market development, marketing plans, business and financial planning for businesses, helping businesses with succession planning, or access to capital and financial literacy, manufacturing efficiencies or process flows, or developing sector benchmarks. So once again, here are those, the compliance portion. So the applicants must be compliant with state regulations. Primary applicant must be headquartered in Vermont and must be registered with the Secretary of State. Service providers have a different, they're allowed to apply for multiple years. So the business grantees cannot. The service provider grantees can continue to apply even if they've received a grant. So project criteria, once again, that $15,000 to $75,000 ask. It's a one-to-one match, so if you ask for $20,000, you need to come up with $20,000. This can be cash or in-kind match. Indirect or overhead costs are allowed for up to 10% of the requested working lands fund. So not your total project, but from what you're requesting from working lands. And under limited circumstances, we do have a match waiver in that application to use and letter of intent. The grant agreement period is 18 months, the same as the business area. Nonprofit projects that compete with for-profit businesses are ineligible. And this is really important to know, something we've done in the past, but this year we will not be funding research projects unless they include direct technical assistance to working lands businesses. So here's the scoring criteria. Once again, very similar to the scoring criteria for a business application. We will continue on. So letters of intent, the review and selection process, they will be reviewed by the board's partners, subject matter experts, and state agency staff. And we will be assessing the projects based on the criteria that we just went over. The board makes the final decisions on all grants. For reviewers, when we send the letters of intent out and the applications out, we follow a strict conflict of interest policy that they're all handed. So if there are any conflicts of interest, we will swap those applications out, and they're not allowed to review or score those proposals. We may request additional information about your project, and in that case, you would receive an email from myself, and I would ask you for that additional information. So a few things to note for the full application. So right now, everyone is working on the letter of intent. No one has to worry about the full application until we notify you yes or no. And basically with that yes, we'll provide you with all the details you need to know in order to apply and get to the site and all of that. So you don't need to worry about that yet. However, to plan ahead, one, you can see right up here our timeline. So the business letter of intent applicants will be notifying you in late December, so mark your calendars for that, and then the full applications will be due Friday, February 12th, and once again at noon. I love saying that. Service provider letter of intent applicants will be notified in late January if they have been invited to submit a full application, and those full applications aren't due until March 4th, so there's a little bit of time there. Service provider applicants similar to before, they're required to submit an outreach plan. You don't submit that in your letter of intent. That's only in the full application. All businesses this year are required to submit a business plan in your full application. You will not be submitting that in your letter of intent, but that's really important to note. So what we're not looking for, if you don't fret if you don't have one. There are a few places we can direct you to for assistance in developing your business plan. And if, let's say, you have one that's 5 years old, something like that, and it's 200 pages, we're not looking for that entire document. We're really looking for a business plan that has to do with your current project, and there are a few key things, key financials that we're looking for that we would look at when reviewing. So that will all be in that full application, and there will be a business plan template of the key things that we're looking for that you can make sure you have in your plan. Okay, so next up, I'm going to hand it over to Emma Hansen.
I see one question you can probably answer right away. What is an outreach plan?
What is an outreach plan? Sure. That's a good question. So service providers would have an outreach plan. And the outreach plan, it's really, and we'll have a template in there, questions that should be addressed on your outreach plan. It's really how you're getting your word out, how you're reaching your businesses. What are you doing to get businesses in the door to help them and provide them with the services that you're offering. So that would pertain to a service provider applicant. Great. All right, Emma, go for it.
So I don't know how many, if any of you have looked at our application in the past, but we are using a new system this year. So I'm just going to walk you through it a little bit so you're familiar with it when you actually log in to start doing this yourself. But it is definitely one of those things that isn't really going to make sense until you're actually clicking in and doing it yourself and getting a feel for it. But at least this way you'll be familiar with the process. So all LOIs must be submitted online at agriculturegrants.vermont.gov. We do not accept any paper applications. And we're going to strongly encourage everyone to log on early, to get a head start, get familiar with everything. So we really want to provide everyone with technical assistance if they run into any issues. But if everyone waits until 11:45 a.m. on the last day, we're not going to be able to. So just in order so we can give everyone the help that they need, which is what we'd like to do, please get in early, work out any bugs. So we're more than happy to help you as long as we have enough time to do so. And we will definitely be available, and Noel's number is there, and also the Working Lands email, which we both have access to. So you have a couple people at your disposal for assistance.
Yeah, it's really nice to have Emma on board this fall to help with the outreach too. So if I can't get to something right away, we're gonna really work to tag team it this fall.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing you're going to do when you come to the screen is create an account. So on the right-hand side in the blue font, you can see register here. That's going to be your first step. Also, make sure that when you're logging in and doing all this, you turn off any pop-up blockers, those sorts of things that will run smoothly. Also note that when you're going through this, you're going to see pre-application, LOI, and letter of intent. Those are all synonymous. Don't fret that you're accidentally filling out the wrong thing. It's just a different figure of speech that was used in the online system, but it's all the same process. So once you have created your profile and you've successfully logged in, you're going to click on Funding Opportunities. Also, I don't know if we've mentioned yet, this is a good time as well, that all of these screenshots you see here are in a guide that you can find on our website as well. There's all these screenshots and all the steps laid out that you can follow along as you go through. Next, depending on whether or not you're a business applicant or a service provider, you will click on either business grants or service provider assessment. This is the screen you'll see. So these will be the two funding opportunities that are presented for you, and then you have to click which one applies. And then you'll click on Start a New Application on the right-hand side. And if you're a business grant, this is the screen that you would see. Now, once you've gone through and created the general information and push Save, you will have an application in the system. Even though you're going to feel like you haven't actually told us anything at all at this point, when you log back in, you're still going to want to go back and click on Existing Applications or My Applications rather than starting a new one. Now, if you would, for example, if you have a business partner or someone else that you'd like to be able to edit your application, you can do that. You can add them to your application. They just have to first create a profile for themselves so that they are in the system. And then once they've done that, you can, at this screen, click Edit, and then add an additional user to your application, and the two of you can work on it together if you prefer to have two logins to do so. Now, the next step, as far as actually filling out the LOI, and something that I found when I was going through and doing this myself was, at some point I was really expecting to write a letter. You never actually write a letter in terms of filling out your letter of intent. That's a little bit of a misnomer. So we'll take you through what it actually entails. So you're going to click on Application Forms, and this will give you a list of all the different things that you have to complete in order to submit your LOI. And you can save them and edit them as often as necessary and come back. So if you are working on something you need to save and walk away, if you actually do that, I just encourage you to push save often just in case. You have to fill out all of the required blanks in order to mark it as complete, and you're going to have to mark it as complete in order to submit it at the end. So you can't skip anything that's marked with a red asterisk, and you will receive a pop-up message notifying you if you try to submit with skipping anything. So this is what the application forms list looks like. So you'll have a list, depending on whether you're a business or a service provider, you'll have a slightly different list of forms here. And you need to click individually on each one of those links, fill it out, and then mark as complete. And once you have a full set of check marks going down that complete row, that's when you'll be able to submit your application. Now, so to add your project information, you need to first click Edit in the right-hand corner to add your information. And when you're done, you need to make sure you click Save or mark as complete. On a few of these screens, it can be a little counterintuitive that you need to click Edit first, but if you're feeling a little stuck, try that. And the other major tip we have is on the narrative questions. There's several of these in the LOI. We highly recommend writing your short essays in Word first and then just copying and pasting them, because the online system has neither a word count or spell check. So, and it is also going to be really particular about how many characters you have.
We do have a character count.
but it won't tell you till like later. So it's helpful in order to know how many characters you have if you're going to just do it in Word or something to the effect of Word. And then you can see not only how many words you have and how many characters, make sure you're within it, and then copy and paste over. And then, yeah, once you click save in here, it'll tell you if you're over the characters, but not how many you necessarily had while you're working on it. So it's just a lot easier to avoid anything. And then when you're done, you need to make sure you click Save and then Mark as Complete. And clicking Mark as Complete is what's going to give you that little check mark on the screen we just saw. Now, this is what the budget screen is going to look like. And again, this is what it looks like when you're editing it. But in order to make it malleable like this, you first need to click Edit in the upper right-hand corner and then scroll back down to this part. And this is the entire budget table, but you might not need to use every single row. In fact, you most likely won't. So if they don't apply to you, you can just leave a 0, and you want to fill them in as appropriate to you with appropriate descriptions. And you want to, at the bottom, there's going to be a match percent calculator that's going to show you how much match you've registered. You need to make sure you have at least 100% demonstrated. If you have 120%, that's okay too. You just need to make sure you have at least 100% demonstrated on there, or it won't let you save and mark as complete. Again, there's a short essay question on the budget page as well, and same thing, we recommend editing it in a word processor and then copying and pasting. So once you have a complete series of check marks and you've gone through, you've made sure everything looks good, then you can submit your application and you'll receive a pop-up letting you know that it's been successfully submitted. Now you can go through and you can edit your application as many times as you want until you push submit. At that point you won't be able to go back and edit anything. I think that's it for me.
Great.
Take you to questions?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So here is contact information. Feel free to jot that down. It is on the application materials. You can find that online. So at this point, what we'll do for the other sites hosting this webinar, if you want to collect questions, either verbally on your end or with pen and paper, and you can just type them right into your webinar question box. We'll field them as they come in. I'll start off with the ones that are out there. For those in this room in Montpelier, if you have paper on you, feel free to write out a question if you have them, and then in a couple minutes we'll start a conversation as well. We'll do a little bit of both. And for those logged in from your home or office, feel free to type any questions you may have. Okay. So far, the first question we have here is, under the business category, is it okay to submit a project that starts before May, but for funding that would apply to a later phase, like July or December? You can absolutely have a project that starts before your grant agreement period. However, you need to make sure that your budget template, your match that you have with your project ask, is all spent within the grant agreement period. So sure, businesses may have a really large project going on, and the working lands project might be a smaller component of that project, but you just need to fit it in within that 18-month frame. And of course, giving an outline of the larger picture and what has happened to date and what's going on is also, of course, helpful for reviewers as they go through and look at proposals.
So
I'll grab it.
I'll just restate and so that matching funds and grant funds must be utilized during the grant period. And if you, like Noel says, if it's a large project, what we recommend is that maybe you have a phase, and the phase comes up to and ends at the time that then the working lands funds and monies begin.
So the next question, when will a copy of this recorded session be available and how can I obtain it? So tomorrow I am, with no technical difficulties, I will be posting the webinar recording right where you go to apply. It'll be your last link there. So I'm going to just post it right to the main site. So which category does a food co-op fall under? I would say that depends on the project and the partners involved. So I would love to touch base with you, and maybe we can go back and forth on what project that would entail. And feel free to shoot me an email or just give me a call, but I have your name on the webinar screen. So if you put in your email, then I'll be sure to reach out to you this week, and hopefully we can get that straightened out. To be in compliant with taxes, do the taxes need to be current or a plan in place with the tax department? That's a good question.
Yeah.
We're thinking plan in place. Okay, so please clarify your comment on the applicant work time as regards to the matching funds requirement. Melissa, did you want to elaborate on that since you
I'm wondering
said it?
if she wrote that before I commented. Basically, you have a grant period, say it's January 1st to December 31st. So your grant funds and your matching funds have to be used between that January 1st and December 31st period.
Just sorry, to add one bit of clarity, the time would be the time that the applicant spends on the project, not the time that you spend on the application. Hours spent working on the application cannot be counted as match.
Yes.
Good point, Jared. Please chime in, yes, as we go.
Thank you. Good clarification.
Do you have a follow-up question on that point?
Separate question if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it, and I'll repeat this if those on the phone and on the computer can't hear it. Go ahead.
I have a horse boarding stable, and so it's my business, but yet I'm a service provider. So what if you kind of fall under both categories?
It would depend on the project. And it depends, think about, and we can touch base afterwards too and go into detail, but I would think about the outcomes. So one thing everyone will have to submit, not in the letter of intent phase, but in the full application phase, is a goals, performance measures, and outcomes template. And thinking about your outcomes, what you're trying to reach, your end goal of the project might help you think about where you best fit. So if your goal is your outcome is to increase jobs for your business, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're helping other businesses with things and helping them increase their income or that sort of thing, you might fall in business versus a service provider. So let's talk a little bit more about that after.
Okay. Examples of service providers are often things like UVM extension, VHCV. They're often, but not always, nonprofits, things that are going to be offering technical assistance to other businesses, if that helps clarify.
So then to follow up on that, a college providing the ability for area businesses to scale up, that would be a service provider.
Yeah, so that comment, we had a comment in the room, so a college providing services to businesses in the area to scale up, that would be an example of a service provider. And in that case, you would submit an outreach plan that would then talk about how you're reaching the different businesses and what you're providing them.
By receipt, they're buying out of order.
Yeah. Okay, so the match waiver, businesses and service providers can apply for a match waiver. That's located within your budget narrative portion of the letter of intent. So you'll see as you go through your questions and you look at your budget template on the grants management system, that a waiver, there is space to type in your waiver or justification for a match waiver there.
Can you go back? The one note at the very the top there. Can you expand that window
This
so
one?
you can see the text better?
Maybe. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so the text.
Yeah.
So I want to see what are other sources for matching funds. How could another grant be used if you are waiting to find out if each one is accepted? Sorry, I'm trying to read that even with my glasses. So that's, again, it goes back to that matching funds have to be in hand if you submit a full application at the time that the grant is finalized.
So if those funds have already been won?
If they've already been won, then they're in hand.
Yep, great. Okay.
Right.
Yep, as long as they're not expended, yep, before that grant agreement. In hand is...
So existing grant funds can be used as match.
Awesome.
The prior question about the labor rate, how is the time and pay rate for that person decided if the in-kind donation is contributed by labor?
Where is that one?
Right above where you were.
Right above,
Right?
okay. Nope.
Right there.
Ah. Okay. It's up to you to put in your pay rate. They need to be in line with current market rates. So as a reviewer is looking at your proposal, if it's extraordinary, it is, you know, something that doesn't make sense, or it's way too much money, or it doesn't seem in line with current market, we may follow up with you and ask about it.
I was hoping that would make our text bigger. At least now we're going in order, so we won't miss any. Okay.
Can you use cash flow projections as match? Sure, as long as that cash is in hand during your grant agreement, period. Okay, we're going to scroll down. We had a little crazy incident for those on the webinar trying to read the text from so far away, but we're slowly making progress here.
There's a little box in the upper right corner of the window.
It pops it back in, believe it or not. Yeah, I know.
That one about do nonprofits have to submit a business plan?
Ah, perfect. Okay. Do nonprofits have to submit a business plan? So nonprofits would most likely be applying to the service provider area. In that case, service providers do not submit a business plan. So they would submit an outreach plan.
But if they are applying in the business area, we would want to see the equivalent of a business plan, including financials, and it may be a strategic plan that links this project to your overall organizational goals.
Great. Thanks, Jared. At what link is the online guide with screenshots? So if you go to your apply page, it is right there. It says LOI instructions to submit on the grants management system. And that's where your screenshots are. And I would recommend printing that out and having it next to you on your computer as you log into the grants management system. Can cash be revolving lines of credit or other commercial loans? Yes. Yeah. Think about that more. Do you work with businesses during letter of intent submission period? Are you a resource? So yes and no. I'm myself and Emma are great resources in terms of we can feel like, is this project a good fit? How do you submit your application? What are the components of the program?
the reviewer process, all of that stuff, the timelines. In terms of your business and where you need to go next, we're good at directing you to partners. I would say if you go right onto the website, we do have a resource list right now. Small Business Development Center can certainly get you going in terms of your business plan, things like that. And depending who you are, there are different resources that may fit your needs better than others. So I would say I'm a really good front door, and then I'll do what I can and work with my partners here at the Agency of Ag and Jared with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to get you to where you need to go. Let's say if you're not quite ready for a Working Lands grant or you need additional support. Can any part of your project begin before the grants are awarded? No. So your matching funds and your Working Lands funds need to be spent during that grant agreement period.
Or I would say if it starts before, it will not count as matching. So it's always within those goalposts of the beginning and end date. If you want it to count towards your matching funds, you don't want to start the project until you have a signed grant.
So another question about matching funds. Do the matching funds need to match per category or just for the entire project? So that's the entire project. So if you're, have equipment and labor and different things in there, it does not need to match up one-to-one for each category of your project, but just as long as the total match matches the Working Lands request one-to-one.
However, I will note that the budget form does show matching according to the line items. And so you just need to approximate where your matching funds fit on the budget form itself.
So to clarify that, sorry, if I could, you could get all of the equipment for a project from one source, and that could qualify to match all of the cost to install it from Working Lands.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep. Okay, we are a value-added producer which uses products from our family farm, but we are not the farmer. Will we be considered eligible? Yes, definitely. And I would elaborate in your proposal that you are getting your ag product from a farm in Vermont. Covered that. Yeah, we covered that. Okay, we're working through the questions. Okay. Jared is up getting close to the computer here. Smart move. I think I was sitting closer on Friday.
We were.
Yes. Please elaborate about the matching funds. If the in-kind donation is contributed by labor, how is the pay rate for that person decided? So once again, the labor rates need to be in line with current market rates. We would look at that and think about, is this low, is this too high? If it's really out of the ordinary, we would follow up with you. What are other sources for matching funds? How could another grant be used? If you are waiting to find out if each one is accepted. Sure. So a grant can't be used. Something else can't be used beforehand. It has to be spent within that grant agreement period. And other sources for matching funds. So your cash funds. Once again, it could be funds in the bank, loans, grants, line of credit. In-kind funds can be donations of time. It could be donations of things as well. What would an outreach plan look like for equipment needed for manufacturing efficiencies? That actually sounds like you may be applying to the business area depending on your bigger project. So we should definitely talk a little bit more about your project to see where you best fit. I'm going to pass one for now, but I will get back to it one-on-one. Can funds be used to create a firm? Does that say firm?
No.
Film. I thought my eyes were good, but they're not. I think I'm losing my eyesight.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to move up. So, but then we have to get straight. So I would like to talk a little bit more about that. It depends on the purpose of the film. My gut says no in terms of direct assistance or directly benefiting ag and forestry businesses, but I think I would need to know a little bit more about the outcomes of that film and what it's providing. Are there other limitations beyond matching funds for a business applying to multiple grant organizations for funding on the same project? No. So you can actually, your match can be other state funds or federal funds. There are no limitations. You can certainly match Working Lands project with another grant or loan. Okay, I think we covered that. Is money that you have invested into your business, such as buying equipment, labor expenses, etc., are they considered matching funds, or do matching funds need to come from an outside source? So money that you've already invested is not a matching fund. So it needs to be invested. You can have that money on hand and invest it into any of those things during the grant agreement period within your project realm. That would be considered as match.
Can I clarify? And
yeah.
The most important thing is that you want costs that are directly related to the project, not the cost of doing business or what's important for your regular business expenses.
However, 10% of indirect costs or overhead costs, so the everyday cost of doing business,
right, can
be worked in as match. So up to 10% of your Working Lands ask.
For service provider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are a farm business likely to apply for a business grant. We also have worked on research grants in the past with service providers. And in this case, a service provider may also apply and ask us to be a partner. Is this okay? Yes, that's certainly okay. Can you use materials for a project as your match? Absolutely. So materials that you'd have on hand that you're going to use into your match, that would be an in-kind match in that case. If you're going to purchase the materials during the grant agreement period, then with money that you have, then that would be a cash match. Can a single farm apply for more than one project at a time? That's a really good question. I would discourage it. What I would do, I would touch base with one of us and talk about your project. And I would also think about your outcomes and look at the goals for Working Lands and think about which one is really going to hit home and focus on one and carry it through. You certainly can. It's not like it's not allowed. And if you're still unsure, put in 2 letters of intent. But I would say focusing in on the right one would be a stronger letter of intent. Are funds awarded at the beginning of the grant agreement period, or is it a reimbursement system? I'm going to pass that question over to Melissa to answer.
So working lands business grants are on a reimbursement basis. Typically, grant funds are not reimbursed until those costs have been experienced. If and this again, we're just at letter of intent. But once you have the full application, now this would be important to know it, only if you have a purchase order.
So accruals do count.
Pardon?
Is a cash or accrual? Meaning you have an outstanding, let's say you had a subcontract out that got paid in 3 installments. Is the reimbursement based on the actual payment or the accrual of the expenses?
Accrual of expenses. So most grants are paid 40% and then 40% of the interim, and then all grants within the state are required to have a retainer of 20% or so that is retained until the end of the grant, until we receive all your final reports, your invoice, your deliverables, proof of expenses, and your actuals and budgeted, so that everything is all completed. Then the final retainer is released to you.
Thank you. Okay, so even though donations count, an in-kind donation wouldn't count if it's the value of your land. So if your project's taking place on land, you can't count the value of your land as match.
Well, that may be asking land that's made available for them to use by someone else if it's not their own land. And in that case, maybe it would count.
Yes, good point. So Jared just made the point, if land is being available to you due to the project, then that might be able to count, yes.
Probably, likely the rental value of that land for that period of time.
Great.
And I just want to say above, does inventory count toward matching funds? Not if it's inventory you already have on hand. This is what's acquired during the project for that project.
So thank you for clarifying. So project-specific inventory.
Correct.
Good. Yes, okay. Great. So a great match for businesses in Windham County could be the Windham County Economic Development Program Fund, just as an example. What if the project is less than $5,000? The minimum is $5,000. So I would put in an application for the minimum amount and work it that way. Maybe your project is a little bigger. If the available grant funds become limited, is it possible an applicant will be offered a grant value less than their previous request? Should applicants request a smaller amount of money if possible? In the past, we have awarded partial funds depending on your project request. So I would really think about your budget and your project, and the funds, as always, are really competitive, even more so this year because we have a reduced amount of funding. So I would really think about your budget and make sure your budget is composed of that core project and is really carrying home your goals and outcomes that relate to the program. Any other questions at this point? Any in the room here? Here we go. Okay. Define scaling up. So scaling up could be a few different things. I'll give one example and then others can tag team. But let's say you have 5 employees and you're working at a certain scale and you're producing X amount of goods and you know that there's demand for a greater amount of product. So you're scaling up, you're going to get equipment that can process more units. it might, you may be scaling up enough to hire a couple more people to then run that machinery, so that would be an example of scaling up. Distinguish between in-kind match and labor as cash. Labor as cash would be if you are the applicant and you are doing the work and you're going to pay yourself. Did I answer that correctly?
So if I had, let's say, $1,000, 500 of which is labor as cash, and could the other 500 be labor as in kind?
Yes. Yep. Yep. In kind can be labor as well. Yep. Labor as cash would be what you're actually paying yourself for, and your in kind would be you're not actually getting the money, but you're putting labor into it, and you're going to count what you would pay yourself as your in kind, but that money's not actually flowing around.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Can leasing expenses for land where you are growing a crop count as match? Likewise, can labor expenses for growing a crop that will be processed with the item the grant will pay for count as match? Let me just reread that. I would say,
I think we need to get back to you on that one.
well, and I will say one thing. If you think about, if you've been growing a crop there for a while and you've been leasing it, and it's not just given to you for this project as an in-kind donation, then I would say it would count as indirect, and it couldn't be counted because I would assume that would be an everyday cost of doing business. Yeah, I know.
Then in-kind can be materials as well. That's the primary example of in-kind are materials that are acquired or donated for a project.
I would also offer, this is Jared Duval. I work with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and last year I served as one of the primary reviewers of the applications, and I will again this year. Just two pieces of advice that come to mind going back to the overview that Noelle provided in terms of what the review team is looking for. There are so many great projects that get proposed. The extent to which you can make the impacts concrete and provide us with measurable impacts, whether that is increase in production, whatever the units that are appropriate to you in terms of increasing sales, the number of businesses that you're partnering with up and down the supply chain, potential increase in employees. You know, this program is one of the pilot programs that is reporting on results-based accountability, and we have performance metrics that we report back to the legislature to show that this is a good investment of taxpayer funds. And to the extent to which you can provide the information that helps make that case not just in a kind of rhetorical way, but give us the information we need to show what these impacts are, that will be really key. Another thing I would say in terms of Noelle discussed need. I think that's one of the reasons that the board decided to ask for business plans this year and the financials that go along with it. Because we would see, I think a lot of the original intent of this program is that many working lands businesses are low margin businesses, high risk businesses that have difficulty accessing traditional forms of capital. We saw some applications last year where the applicant could say, we expect a return on investment of this project within 3 to 5 years. And they could access traditional capital, but they were quote unquote debt averse. Everybody is debt averse. So really, you know, if there is a way to fund your project and you have the means or the access to traditional capital and you will see a return on investment, I would say go that traditional route. I think that this grant program exists to fill gaps that exists on the capital continuum for those working lands businesses and service providers that are having a more difficult time because of that low margin, high risk nature. And so I think that's part of the unique part of this grant program.
Thanks, Jared.
Excellent.
Okay, well, at this point, I think we will come to a close. Thank you so much for participating. Please follow up